I'm a 31-year-old female. This happened when I was 29 back in 2020. My friend, let's call her Stacy, told me that she had a friend, let's call her Brianne, that needed a dog sitter because Brianne and her husband were going on a vacation to California. Stacy knew I dog sat on an app called Rover, which, by the way, is an app where you can house sit random strangers' dogs, walk them, and you name it. Anyway, I thought it was the perfect opportunity since I was in need of some cash. $200 to dog sit for 5 days. Why not, right? Brianne showed me around her house a week before I dog sat for her, while also letting me meet her huge husky named Bear. I'm not going to lie, it was a big husky, a little overweight, but still adorable. Brianne told me I was welcome to help myself to whatever food I wanted. Perfect. The front door also included a lock where you could punch in a number code to get in, so it was pretty secure. About a week rolls around, and I show up later on a Friday night, not too long after Brianne and her husband left the house to go to California. Things were pretty chill for the first 2 days. I was at work most of the afternoon, went to feed the dog on my break, then went back to work. I came back later at night and would take Bear for rides in my car. I stayed up late watching movies, then let Bear sleep by me when it was time to go to bed. Anyways, after work on Monday night, I heard a knock at the door. I went over and looked through the peephole, and it was a guy that looked like he was wearing a black police uniform. I thought it was a little bit odd, but I opened up the door to see what was up. "Hello, I'm looking for a George," he said. George, I thought. "Oh no, there's no George here. I'm dog sitting for a friend. I've been here since Friday," I said. Looking back, that was pretty stupid to tell a random person at the door that I didn't know that I was alone. "Oh, okay. How long are you here?" he said. "Till Wednesday," I said. He said, "Oh, that's cool. Okay, sorry to bother you." Then he left. I was slightly weirded out and locked the door. I texted Brianne what had just happened. She said, "Oh, don't worry about it," and shrugged it off. I thought that was weird too. Things were normal again, up until I went to bed Wednesday night at midnight. As I was laying in bed, the thought kept coming to my mind I should make sure the front door was locked. So I got up and checked it. Luckily, it was, but I still had a weird vibe. I fell asleep and then woke up at 3:05 a.m. to the dog barking like crazy. It freaked me out a little. I thought someone had broken in. I got up and went to the living room where I saw Bear was growling and barking at the front door. I looked through the peephole and saw the same guy with another guy this time standing there in security guard uniforms. At this point, I was creeped out. Why would the same guy come back when he knew I was alone with my car in the driveway? I didn't bother opening up the door. 2 guys I didn't know dressed like security guards at 3 a.m.? I made sure all the doors were locked. Then I saw they had walked off. I opened the door and didn't see any type of security car anywhere. I still have to thank Bear. I think his barking could have scared them off. I went back inside and then went to bed and fell back asleep. I didn't bother telling Brianne because she was in California anyways. I'm glad to say I only stayed there 1 more night after that. To this day, I still don't know who those guys were or what they wanted, and I haven't been back to dog sit since that incident. This happened about a year ago. I have a good friend named Jesse. We've been friends for years, and Jesse has a golden retriever named Goldie. Goldie's great. He's very friendly and well-behaved. I always enjoy seeing him. Well, Jesse was going out of town for just a few days and asked me to watch Goldie for him. I would stay at his place because Goldie got lonely on his own, and his house already had all of Goldie's food and toys, plus he had a yard to go out in. I just had an apartment. Jesse had recently moved into a rental house a few months prior. He did have 1 roommate, and all I knew that he was a guy who lived in the basement part of the house. I arrived at the house after Jesse left, and I brought with me everything I needed for the next few days. The house was pretty nice. It was a little small and old, but it was decorated well. I fed Goldie, took him on a walk, and let him out at all the times I was supposed to. That night, I was sleeping in the bedroom and woke up in the middle of the night for some reason. Immediately, I could tell that I was woken up by the sound of somebody walking in the hallway right outside of the bedroom. The floors in the house were really creaky. It must have been Jesse's roommate, but why would he be walking outside of my bedroom up here? I sat up in bed and listened to him walking back down the hallway. Then I stopped hearing anything. I looked over and saw that Goldie was still sleeping in his dog bed in the corner of the room. I got up out of bed and then walked over to the door and opened it. I then looked out into the hallway. Everything was pitch black from all the lights being out. However, I did see what appeared to be somebody standing at the end of the hallway, sort of around the corner. I couldn't tell if they were facing me or not, but they appeared to just be standing there. Like I said, it was really dark, and I mean really dark. The only reason I saw the guy at all was because my eyes had adjusted a little bit. It was seeming really weird, so I just closed the door again and then got back in bed. Eventually, I was able to fall back asleep. The next morning, when I woke up to my alarm, I sat up and grabbed my phone to turn it off. As I was doing so, I heard footsteps suddenly walking away down the hallway from my door. I got up and walked out of the room to see if it was Jesse's roommate. When I opened the door, I just barely saw a guy going around the corner. I followed, and I made it around the corner just in time to see the basement door closing. Jesse's roommate was seeming really weird. I got my phone and asked Jesse if his roommate usually walked around upstairs, because I was under the impression that his roommate had the whole basement and Jesse had the whole ground level. Jesse texted back saying no, he never comes upstairs unless he's leaving to go somewhere. Why? I told Jesse how he had been walking around upstairs in the middle of the night and in the morning. Jesse replied saying that his roommate wasn't there and he had gone to New York for 2 weeks. When I read the text, my heart started racing. I got Goldie and we both got inside my car. I then drove back to my apartment and called the police. Long story short, some random guy was living in the basement. I don't know when or how he got in. I thought it was the roommate, but the whole time, I was wrong. It makes me even more creeped out to know that he'd been walking around outside my bedroom in the middle of the night. I'm a female, and this happened when I dog sat for the first time. This took place a couple of months ago. I live by myself in a house that's in a pretty typical neighborhood. I get along well with all of my neighbors, and I also love animals. I don't have any pets of my own yet, but I've been planning to get a dog in the near future. My neighbor Ned, who was 3 doors down from me to the west, knocked on my door one day and asked if I would dog sit for him. I didn't really know Ned all that well, but I had seen his dog out in the yard a few times. I told him yes, and he told me that he was going out of town just for the weekend, which was 2 days. He told me everything I needed to know, and it seemed like it would be pretty easy. He was also going to pay me a pretty decent amount. I would just have to go to his house a couple of times a day to care for his dog, and also walk his dog. Several days later, Ned left, and I used the key he had gave me to go over and feed his dog. He had a pretty small dog that was named Dot. I was there for maybe 15 minutes, and then went back later that night to feed Dot again. When I got there that night, I was preparing Dot's food, and suddenly heard the back door open. I was just around the corner in the kitchen. Before I had a chance to do anything, I looked over to see a masked man entering the room. My only thought was to run. He was headed straight for me, and I sprinted through the room to the front of the house. My best way of getting out of there was to go through the front door, which I did. Then I ran through the front yard back to my place. Whoever that guy was did not leave the house and remained inside. I got my phone out and called the police, and then I called Ned and told him what had happened as I waited for the police to arrive at my house. Ned seemed really concerned and made sure that I had called the police. He apologized and said that he realized he must have left the back door to the house unlocked. I was just glad that I was okay, but Dot was still at Ned's house. When the police had arrived down the street, I went back. Dot was fine, but after the police searched the entire house and property up and down, nobody was found. I guess whoever had been there had left. I just hoped that they wouldn't come back. The next day was the last day that I had to go over there to feed Dot, and then Ned would be back. On that day, I was headed over there to feed Dot for the first time. As I approached Ned's house and was still in the street, I happened to glance up. I saw in the upstairs level of the house, somebody was looking outside at me. It was Ned. As soon as he saw me, he closed the blinds and moved out of the way. I was really confused. I texted Ned, asking him if he was back already. He responded saying no. Now I knew that he was lying, and it all made sense to me. I responded to Ned and said, "I saw you in the window. That was you in the mask last night too, wasn't it?" Ned didn't reply. Instead, he blocked me. Since then, I haven't seen Ned or Dot at all. I try to avoid going past his house, and I usually don't have to. However, when I have seen his house, he's never outside, and neither is Dot. I'm not even completely sure if he still lives there or not. I'm probably 99% sure that Ned was the one in the mask at his own house.